Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman, and today we got a real treat for you. Her name is Catilin Justesen, and she is the Executive Communications Advisor to the FEMA Administrator. Caitlin, say what's up to everybody.
Hey, Joseph, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing, sure thing. And you're a little bit different because you're with FEMA. It's a federal agency. I still think it has to do with public works. I always say if you serve the public through your work, in large, you're in public work. So it's thanks for hopping on the show. Thanks for being willing to come and sit with me and talk about your backstory and then also what you do. So let's talk about it. You are the executive communications advisor to the FEMA administrator. It's so vague. Like you got to give us a random Tuesday for Kaylin. What do you do all day?
Well, thanks for that. And I just want to start by saying thank you to the public works, community that's out there right now, especially with this heat. And they are actually a huge part of emergency management. Once you see a disaster come through, our linemen, our folks that are clearing debris, they are emergency managers too. So that's important. I wanted to get that out there. A regular day in my life, well, it's quite a catch-all. So I could be doing anything from writing a speech to helping the administrator prepare for an on-camera appearance. Maybe she's filming a video to welcome attendees to a conference that she might not be able to attend in person. She's very connected with the workforce, so love putting together workforce engagements. They kind of call me the FEMA party planner, and if that could be a real job, I would love to be the FEMA party planner. That would be great.
Okay. So it sounds like you dabble in a lot of things throughout the day, which is pretty cool. I'm sure it adds some spice to the day, not the same thing over and over. But let's talk about what your career path has been like. Because I always envision in this podcast, there's gonna be a 15-year-old Caitlin listen to this one day. She's gonna say, I want to model my career after what Caitlin did. So let's talk about it. At 15, were you interested in FEMA and being a communications advisor? So tell us what it was like from it's high school through college and where you're at today.
Well, it was a journey. I can tell you that I never thought I would be working in emergency management. I very much wanted to be a news reporter. I went to school and I studied journalism. Specifically, I wanted to be a TV news anchor. I was very passionate about storytelling for quite a while throughout my college career. It took me 6 years to finish college, but I did it. And my first call for a job out of college, I want to get this straight though, I did work throughout college, but my first post-school call came from FEMA. They were looking for something called local hires, which after a disaster, they want to really bring in the community to be a part of that recovery process. And they needed a writer. And I obviously love to write. And I applied and I got a call. And I remember being on the dock of this lake out in California on vacation, jumping up and down, trying to find reception because I was like, yes, I need a job. And at that time, my now husband, he was a police officer. And so I just kind of became engrossed in this public safety world. And I got into emergency management and was really passionate about the work that we were doing. And I've never left emergency management since 2017.
Okay. I love it. I love the path. So I always have to ask, we all have these hopes and dreams as kids. You wanted to be a news reporter, news anchor. You wanted to, into writing. So how do you scratch that itch? And I'm teeing you up for kind of your big announcement. So how do you scratch that itch on being a TV reporter or being in front of the camera and reporting? Do you have something coming down the pipeline you want to talk about?
I do. I got to a place where I really wanted to exercise my creative muscles in a little bit of a different way. So I started a YouTube channel. It's kind of a pet project. It's called Now You Have My Attention. And it's really just meant to highlight some folks in pop culture who got our attention. So my first episode is launching on August 11th, and I'll be focusing on the street artist Banksy and his shenanigans that he's been involved in since the 90s. So I'm very excited to cover that story.
Good stuff. Because I love how we can have our careers and still have our passion projects on the side and then not interfere with each other. Like I love that about the modern culture. So let's talk about what it takes to be a person in your position. Like if you were to give advice to somebody coming out of high school and they're like, Caitlin, I want to be good at what you do. What would that one skill set you would tell them to be good at, to be successful at what you're doing today?
I think it starts with having confidence in yourself to put yourself in situations that are really complex, at least in emergency management and a lot of emergency response sort of services. You are faced with really tough problems. You have maybe a natural disaster, or it's a man-made issue, all hazards. And so if you're going to step into this, and for me, I like to think that I'm kind of in that crisis communications bucket. You have to be passionate about getting information out to people that's accurate and timely and really useful for them in a way that is also creative. So that was really my calling and my draw for this position. But it really, again, it starts with having the confidence in your abilities. And so again, it's a public speaking kind of thing we're talking about here. So practicing your writing. If you have an opportunity to go to a social event and speak with people, prompt conversation, see how long you can keep somebody engaged. And if they follow up and they say, hey, wow, you seem like somebody that I want to keep in my network, let's stay in touch. So it's building your network, practicing your public speaking skills, and finding that right niche that connects with you. Because if you're not passionate about the mission, that's going to come across in your work. So it's very important that you get somewhere that makes you happy and the people that you're supporting you believe in.
Gosh, I love that. And I'm the type of guy, I like to dig deeper and get actionable with things. So let's say I got a party on Friday coming up. You know, I'm going to be around people in my industry, and I want to be the guy that leaves an impression on people after I talk to them, like as I'm out networking. So give me some tips, tricks. I'm sitting at home at the kitchen table. I got a pen and pad. What should I be writing down to make that those instances where I do meet people more impressionable?
Ask them about themselves. I feel as though we are so good at getting into conversations and talking about the things that we're accomplishing. We really fail to ask somebody about themselves. And that's really simple. Beyond the, well, what do you do for work, right? That's one of the default questions that we fall onto is, what do you do for work? And then they answer, and then you usually go, that's interesting. And then you talk about something else. If they seem passionate about what they do, specifically in these professional networking engagements like you mentioned, you have to have a follow-up question. Oh, that's interesting. I was just at an event XYZ where I met XYZ. Do you know this person? And then once you're finding common ground, your network gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more opportunities, ultimately will come your way.
Sure. I love it. I can attest a lot of my, I would say, movement throughout the industry through networking, through meeting people and being the guy that they go, oh, I should connect you with so-and-so. And then boom, some type of magic happens. And I love that. Let's say the emergency management side of things.
Mhm.
An emergency happens in Arizona. Like, we have these heat waves. It's hot. It's way too hot for everybody. So what goes through a communications advisor when an emergency happens? Like, where does your brain start? You wake up, you get all these alerts on your phone. Where do you start?
Great question. It's really about understanding the needs of that community in that moment. And they change. Disasters are very fluid. If you ever read the news or look at Twitter, or I guess that's now X, you'll see that public agencies are very clear about, this is a fluid situation. We will be giving updates, in the next whatever time frame. So understanding that timely information is very important to these folks on the ground. Now, you're in Arizona. This is a state that is confronting incredibly hot temperatures right now. We've seen in the news, especially in places like Phoenix. And okay, so what can I do for myself and my family? Very not heavy technical information. Steps. Here are 5 steps to achieve XYZ. Or here's a resource. Click on this link and it'll take you here. So thinking about if you were speaking to your grandmother or your sister or your family members, when they call you and they ask you on any related topic, it doesn't have to be an emergency. What do you think I should do? How would you answer that question? Very relatably. So that's how, from my perspective as a communicator, talking to somebody in a way that they will understand and appreciate, and very much call to action.
Love it. It's 2023. I mean, Twitter just changed its name to X. Like, there's this thing called was it streams through Instagram? Threads? Yeah. So
Threads, yes.
There's so many different ways of communicating, and I'm sure in your line of work you've talked to people who their only way of communication was that like block of TV from 4 to 7 p.m. at night, Johnny Carson days. So with the change of communications, what would you say is your most efficient way to get the word out, like and make it readily available for everybody? And then where do you see it actually going in the future? Like, let's say we fast forward 50 years from now. And there's like what problems or what ways will we get the information out then from like how we did in the past?
I think it's really understanding that this isn't a one size fits all approach. So although social media is so prevalent right now, we still have people who rely on, now that we're 50 years ahead or 50 years in the future, we're going to have folks that are going to stay with their tried and true modes of communication. So yes, we have a great population of people who are on their phones going through social media, but it's important to be sharing information on trusted applications. So that's the first thing. Anywhere where there's really prevalent miscommunication, any disinformation taking place, that's something to take into consideration to make sure your messaging isn't going to be misused or construed differently. Again, I'm going to go back to the grandma and the aunt and the uncle example. So if I think about my grandma, she loves to go to poker nights. So what if we had trusted community members all over the country who knew where their folks were headed? Okay, we have an older population who really have unique needs during a disaster. I'm going to go see them at poker night or bingo night, or I'm going to go to the hair salon and the barber shops. I'm going to go to the libraries and the community centers. It's not just trying to target millennials or Generation X, Y, Z, whatever they are. It's just face-to-face conversation, because that's where trust is built. It's very rarely built on a screen. I know that you can appreciate this. This podcast, for example, yes, we might be miles and miles apart, but we're still having a face-to-face conversation. So that's how I would approach it, is really putting the work in to make sure you're not just doing a blanket one size fits all approach with your communications.
Yeah, I do respect that, because some people will put a message out and it's like, well, I don't even go on Facebook anymore. Like, I like Facebook with family, but yes. Okay. But yeah, Facebook is interesting because it's, Instagram, Twitter, there's so many different sites where you can put this information out at, and then there's not everybody's on everything at all the time. So, and then I guess last on this topic is AI. What have you seen in regards to your line of work into disaster response, communication? Has AI helped it at all? Have you guys dabbled in it? Do you see a way you can leverage AI to, I guess, move it forward?
I personally haven't worked with AI in communications just quite yet. I know that on the GIS mapping sort of side of things, where we're really trying to see how this technology might be able to improve ways we're collecting data. I can't speak to the specifics of that. I would caution, when it comes to communications, we saw with ChatGPT in the early days when the news was really dropping on its capabilities, and my husband actually showed me this. I didn't even want to go there. I didn't want to open the app because it's really scary. I mean, he showed me, he said, he just typed it into a little chat box, right? Like, remember Ask Jeeves? Chat GPT is like Ask Jeeves times a million. And he said, write me a short essay on climate change. And it did it in 10 seconds. It wrote a 2-pager on climate change. And I said right then, as a communicator, we have to step up our game. We are now competing with robots. In some instances, yes, this will be a great tool to aid our ability to get the job done, but we can't get lazy. We have to sharpen our skills and stay ahead of it.
Gosh, I love that attitude, because I see on LinkedIn all the time, people use chat GPT to create content to drip out, in front of their customer base. And it's, you can kind of tell like the chat GPT format. But it makes me look internally and go, okay, well, if this is their hack, how can I step my game up to where it still looks authentic, it still looks like Joseph, it still looks like Catilin, and in a way that the customer on the back end sees that, oh, he's actually typing this, or he's creating this. It's not just spinning out and shooting out 20 a week. So I appreciate your attitude on that, because you could just poo-poo it and go, oh, this sucks and this is that. But you're like, okay, I need to step my game up.
Yeah,
if they want to play games, I can play games.
That's what to do.
All right, so I need a story from Catilin, a story of when something went wrong under your watch, what you did to rectify it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Man, I'm glad we're not live right now.
Oh, we're live.
I gotta think on this one. You're gonna have to edit this. You're gonna have to pause. It's not going to be, it's not going to be about, this is what it is. So I was in a position prior to joining the headquarters team that was, I was on like a quick reaction force team. And that's the easiest way, like most broadly known explanation, right? An incident happens and I was on a team where nobody else had my job. I was the sole communicator for that team. And we got sent in to help stabilize the issue. We had 2 very significant instances happen back to back. We were working one mission, and then within a 24 to 36 hour period, we were told we were completely changing our direction and being deployed to a different mission. And so that was a lot. And I wanted to protect the team that I was leading on mission number 1 so that they had what they needed to continue on without me, and so that I could set up the success of mission number 2 and give them all my focus. While I was doing that, I became incredibly overwhelmed. And you find that in disaster response, crisis communications, whatever it may be, you have to get it right. You can't get it wrong, because words are forever. It only takes one screenshot. It only takes one phone call for people to call you out on things. And so I pushed myself and pushed myself. And when the mission was over and everything was fine, I was incredibly drained. And I wasn't set up. If we were to get called out in the next maybe week, I still would have been recovering. So I learned the power of pacing yourself in that situation, because you are on your own team, right? You're not just an independent piece of a team of maybe 12 people. You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you're failing yourself and your team.
Totally. I can appreciate that. So how does Catilin every week, every month, every day show up better and better and better? Because you could just say, you know what, emergencies, like who cares? Like they're going to happen. I know how to communicate. I could just whip out something through chat GPT and just, bobbity-bop. But like what keeps your sword sharp? What do you do proactively, intentionally to keep up with the times and keep up with, and making yourself better?
I really enjoy reading the news. I am a news junkie, not just your mainstream stuff, but really digging down into the local articles that are covering FEMA activities, and maybe not just FEMA activities, but the broader conversations right now that are happening around foreign adversaries and climate change and the economy, and understanding the landscape of where our country is headed, but also where the world is headed. Because we've seen History can repeat itself, and what's happening, a couple continents away will make its way to our borders eventually. So the more knowledgeable I am on a more holistic scale prepares me for whatever the next issue might be. So having that knowledge. The second thing is I really love to read. So I found that when I have time, I like to read. And so one of the books that I'm almost finished with, actually, that I'm going to do an episode on, is called Undelivered. It's actually written by one of President Biden's former speechwriters. So he's got this great, he did a lot of research during COVID, and he wrote a book on basically the speech that was supposed to be delivered versus what was actually delivered. And he goes back to the 1800s in some instances. So that was really cool for me to see, as I do write a lot of speeches. So just staying educated and taking the time to step away from work and do some investment in your own knowledge.
Okay. In regards to speech writing, it's pretty cool. I love the concept. Somebody can just give me a speech to deliver. I don't have to write it. But when you're sitting down to write a speech, do you try to write it in the tone or in the energy, the vibe of the person you're giving it to, or do you just write it and say, hey, make this your own?
It absolutely has to have the voice of the person who's delivering it. I do
Okay.
write for a couple different people right now, so they each have their own quirks, how they pause, the cadence, their own personal stories. And I've been in this position at headquarters with the Office of the Administrator for about 2 years now. So you learn about the folks you're supporting and their personal stories so that you can plug those in when it's appropriate and when it makes sense. So yes, absolutely, you have to be like a chameleon and put on a different skin with each speech that you're writing, and it makes your writing stronger.
I would
But it's
think, yeah.
also really important to keep your own voice intact, and so that's another challenge, is being able to distinguish between somebody else and your own voice.
When because you said you like to research and you like to learn, you like to kind of learn, throughout history, how history can repeat itself. So who do you go to? Like, a painter might go to Leonardo DiCaprio to learn some of his fundamentals to get better at his craft. A rapper might look at Jay-Z's early stuff to go, oh, okay, this is how I can craft my product. What do you look for in speech writing? Like, who's the best speechwriter in history that like somebody can glean from to go, okay, if I can learn some of their stuff, then I can move forward from there?
I mean, I can't name drop because a lot of the time when you read a speech, it comes across as being written by the person who's providing it, when really there's a large system behind that. But
Really?
it really depends. I just know that President Obama's speeches were incredibly moving and very powerful, and the way he delivered them was, you understand, all you have to do is watch a speech he's given and he lives it, the way that he pauses. And so that's a combination of having a team behind you that understands the way you want to deliver something, but having a principal who's equally invested in making sure that they're connecting with the audience. And that takes practice. It takes a lot of practice.
Oof, I would think. And in regards to research, give us some of your Google alerts. Like what do you have set to remind you, to keep you up with what's going on in the world today?
Well, lots of things related to emergency management. So I've got FEMA, the Department of Homeland Security. I've got, the White House, National Security Council, and I came from Texas. I worked for the state of Texas for a couple of years. So I have a lot of those alerts still living with me. During disasters, a lot of people don't know this, but the Texas State Operations Center houses it's like an emergency management committee, right? And so when a disaster happens, the council or committee, they're all expected to bring in a representative to this hub, right, where they're managing these events. And there's 34, don't quote me, but I think it's about 34 state agencies. You got to stay on top of all their news. So I've got a lot of stuff coming in, lots of information, but sometimes it's just Googling a certain outlet that you want to check in on. But yeah.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk misconceptions. Let's say we ask your husband's golf buddy, like, "Hey, what does
I
Caitlin
golf.
do
He
all
doesn't
day?"
golf. I golf.
Oh, really? Okay. Let's say we ask one of his somebody that knows you, but they don't work with you. They don't, what would they say you do all? Or if I asked them, what does Caitlin do all day, every day? What would they get wrong in answering that question?
Oh my goodness. I think it's like a lot of social media, but I don't do social media. I don't manage any of the social media accounts. So the misconception to me is people think when they hear communications or public affairs, it's all, again, on the phone. They don't understand the full scope of everything that goes on. And that would probably be it. And so my cautionary tale to people watching this is if somebody tells you they're in communications, there's a lot that goes into it beyond what's happening on X and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all of those other apps.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's say Caitlin is commissioned to put up a billboard. And this billboard, let's say, well, since you're federal, you're countrywide, it's not just one city. Let's say you get a 30-second ad for the Super Bowl. You can put whatever you want. You can whatever message you want to get across. What would Caitlin want to tell to America or whoever's watching the Super Bowl in regards to emergency management?
I think it's going to really be about getting prepared today. And it's really funny you say this. The administrator just partnered recently on a great campaign, right? And so we've got a preparedness campaign that's rolling out, and I'll let that happen in the future. But my point is, it's very similar to what you're talking about, and it's all about preparing. We hear resilience, this word resilience thrown around a lot right now. When it comes to disasters, each and every one of us have a responsibility to take a look at our unique risks and build a plan that addresses them. So do you know your evacuation zone? Do you know how much medicine your family needs to survive for a week if the pharmacies are shut down? Do you know whose house that you're going to go drive to if your house has been flattened by a tornado? So these are questions, and they're tough questions, but it's sit down, grab your family, get a pen, get a piece of paper, and ask yourselves the tough questions and start mapping out that plan together.
Gotcha. Ooh, thanks for the kick in the butt.
I know.
All right, Caitlin, I always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey, and then also offer up a word of inspiration and motivation to your, emergency management counterparts.
I can remember each and every mentor that I had, and it's not necessarily a formal title they had, but from my college professor, Mr. Paul Brown, who was one of my journalism professors, and he brought me back recently to talk to his class, like 10 years later. I mean, how cool is that?
So cool.
And then at Texas State, Tim England, he ran the Bobcat News Studio, where I got to be an anchor for a couple of days on our newscast. So he gave me a shot and was really complimentary and kind of gave me that confidence to keep going down that road. Once I graduated and I went to FEMA, I had 3 people that I still say today got me to where I'm at. And that was Jackie and Kevin and Tony. They saw that I had a unique skill set and I had no federal government experience, no emergency management experience. And they said, you know what? Let's just let her go for it. Let's just throw her out there and see what happens. And I guess it worked out. At Texas, Susanna, she was such a fan. She hired me. She was amazing to work with. We still stay in touch. And then now back here at FEMA, except in Washington, D.C., the administrator, Deanne Criswell, she's so inspirational and such a light to be around. We have a great time, and she's an easy person to work for. So those are my folks, and a piece of inspiration. I just really hope that with this world we're living in, with so much coming at us on a day-to-day basis, news that really is unpleasant for the most part. It's very rare to come across a story that makes you feel happy, is just pass on some good vibes. Dig down deep on those days where you really are having a hard time putting on a smile, and just tell somebody something nice. I love your dress. That's a great bracelet. You did great in that meeting. I love the way you did XYZ. It's such a simple thing to do, and it could be something that impacts somebody's day in ways you would never imagine. So just pass it on. Just be a good person.
That's good. That's good. All right, Caitlin, let's say I'm coming to town. You're in DC, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm coming to DC and I text you ahead of time. I'm like, hey, Caitlin, where can I go to get the best burger in DC? Where are you going to send me?
There's a place up the road from me. It's called Foster's, and it's a char burger place. And they're the closest thing I've found to In-N-Out Burger, which is a company that I don't know how to explain this. I am their biggest mascot. I was the most obnoxious person in Texas because they're a huge Whataburger state. And then In-N-Out came to Texas, and I was at every single grand opening for the locations that were within a 60-mile radius. I was literally there as one of their first customers. There's probably a couple, maybe too many Facebook Live videos of me recording the beauty of their burgers. So for now, come to DC, have a burger at Foster's. If we're ever in California, we can go get a number 2 no onions with a Coke at In-N-Out.
Okay, somebody knows it. I'm from California, and In-N-Out Burger is kind of like, it's cool.
No, why? Why would you end this on that note?
I'm just saying, it's good. Like, my wife loves In-N-Out. I like the fries and the shake and the free hot chocolate if it's raining, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow, you're just, kicking off all the great things about this company. I'm just...
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Caitlin. Well, thank you for hopping on the show. Again, I use this podcast as a way, if somebody younger is listening to this, they can kind of formulate or form their career path after you and listen to your stories, your inspiration, your motivation, and kind of your path to be able to mimic that if they need to. Because in our industry, public works, it's not enough millennials, Gen Zers coming into it ready to rock and roll. So thank you for hopping on. Any final words before we get out of here?
I just want to say thank you very much for having me on. It's been really fun. I love doing these sorts of things, and I hope we stay in touch. And good for you. You have a really important mission, and I think you're going to inspire quite a few more folks to do what you're doing.
Hope so. Thank you. Well, Caitlin, again, thanks for hopping on. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Caitlin's on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to her, feel free. She seems like a ball of happiness and motivation and inspiration. I'm sure she'd love to share that with you. Other than that, this has been the Public Works Podcast, and thank you for tuning in.